What's the prize? Troy? The Star Dazzle Award? You have to go through all of this just to get either one?
So, there has been some talk recently about Disney possibly bringing Zac Efron back for a new High School Musical film. And while that might make some fans super excited, others are kind of side-eyeing the idea, thinking it could go terribly wrong. But then Zac Efron recently shared some nostalgic thoughts about filming High School Musical, specifically that legendary basketball scene 18 years ago, and it sparked new hope. When actors start talking fondly about old roles, it's usually not random. It often means something might be brewing behind the scenes, maybe even a sequel. So naturally, the big question is, are we actually getting High School Musical 4? Well, let's talk about that because there are a bunch of reasons why it could work and a few solid reasons why it might not. First off, there's a tough truth about how High School Musical 3 ended, and it kind of complicates the idea of continuing the story. That third movie gave us closure for the main crew, Troy, Gabriella, Chad, Taylor, Sharpay, and Ryan, as they all wrapped up their high school lives and started heading off in different directions. The first two movies were more lighthearted, focused on self-discovery and friendship, with the second one showing them having fun over summer break. But by the time the third movie rolled around, things got a little heavier. It was all about saying goodbye to high school and wondering what the future would bring. Troy Bolton's final scene really stood out. He announced that he was heading to UC Berkeley so he could play basketball and do theater. It sounded like the perfect compromise for his character, but in real life, that kind of balance is a logistical nightmare. College gets intense fast, and trying to juggle two demanding passions like sports and drama plus a relationship with Gabriella would have been overwhelming. At some point, Troy would have had to pick one path over the other, which kind of puts a damper on continuing his story exactly where it left off. Even though we love the idea of Troy doing it all, the truth is that college tends to force you to specialize in one thing. Trying to balance competitive sports, theater rehearsals, and life in general would have been exhausting. So if High School Musical 4 picked up with Troy still trying to manage all that, it might feel a little unrealistic. Eventually, he'd have to make some hard choices, and that's a much heavier story than what most fans are probably expecting. And let's not forget High School Musical, the series. Yep, that's a mouthful, which already played with the idea of High School Musical 4 being made within the show. Some of the original actors even popped up, and the show hinted at Troy and Gabriella being in therapy later in life, so in a weird way, it kind of kept the door open for a real sequel. A fourth film could take that and run with it, show us where Troy is now, how he navigated his post-college life, and maybe how he's raising kids who are finding their own passions. Zac Efron as a grown-up Troy, now in his 30s, could be super compelling. What if he gave up on both basketball and theater and ended up doing something totally different, like working in business? Maybe he's burned out and wondering what happened to the dreams he had back in high school. That kind of midlife reflection could be the perfect setup for him to reconnect with what used to inspire him. And imagine if he ended up teaching drama or coaching basketball back at East High. That would come full circle and set things up nicely for a new generation to take over, maybe even leading to High School Musical 5 with his kids in the spotlight. Now, when it comes to High School Musical, the series, the spin-off took a creative mockumentary-style approach that worked pretty well. But there was one behind-the-scenes idea that thankfully didn't make it to the screen. According to the series creator Tim Federle, a Disney exec once pitched a cameo where a camera would spin around to reveal Zac Efron playing himself, like literally just Zac Efron, the actor, filming the mockumentary. Honestly, that would have been a total mess. Having Zac show up as himself rather than as Troy would have blurred the lines too much between fiction and reality. It could have confused fans and cheapened the emotional impact of seeing him again. Plus, it would have distracted from the story and probably just felt like a random gag. So the decision to skip that cameo was definitely the right one. Also, let's be real, Efron never showed up in the series, and that was probably for the best. The show had a new cast and was trying to create its own vibe. Bringing in someone like Zac could have easily overshadowed the characters the show worked hard to develop, and honestly, Zac has moved on from his Disney Channel days. It wouldn't make much sense for him to show up in a high school setting again, even if it's just for nostalgia. But there's also a practical side to this. Even if the creators had said yes to that wild cameo idea, Zac's schedule likely wouldn't have allowed it. He couldn't commit to a proper return as Troy, so asking him to pop in as himself for a behind-the-scenes joke would have been a long shot. At best, it would have been a quirky surprise, but at worst, it could have made his whole legacy feel like one big joke. And let's be honest, Troy Bolton deserves better than that. One of the most exciting directions they could take would be shifting the spotlight to Troy and Gabriella's kids and letting us dive into their world at East High. After all, it's been over 15 years since we last saw Troy singing in a Wildcats jersey and Gabriella walking off stage into an uncertain future. So imagine how full circle it would feel to see their children now navigating the same halls, trying to carve out their own paths just like their parents once did. It wouldn't just be nostalgia bait either, it could actually give us a meaningful look at how different high school life is today compared to when Troy and Gabriella were students. Their kids might be dealing with modern pressures like social media, online comparison, academic burnout, and identity exploration in a way that feels fresh and relatable. And while we'd get the usual musicals, basketball games, and hallway drama, this new generation could reflect what real high school looks like in the 2020s. But of course, the fun part would be the parallels. Maybe Troy's son is a naturally gifted athlete but secretly loves music just like his dad. Or maybe Gabriella's daughter is all about academics, but unlike her mom, she wants nothing to do with performing until a twist in the story nudges her out of her comfort zone. There's so much potential for clever callbacks to the original trilogy, but with enough twists to make it feel like its own story. And having Troy and Gabriella now on the sidelines as parents would add that extra emotional layer because now they're the ones giving advice and cheering from the stands. This could also be the perfect way to pass the torch, just like how Cobra Kai reignited the Karate Kid legacy through its younger cast while still honoring the originals. High School Musical 4 could do something similar. Maybe Troy is now East High's basketball coach, mentoring his son's team. Maybe Gabriella is a professor or STEM mentor, showing up for science fairs or academic competitions. We'd still get glimpses of their old dynamic, but now with the maturity that comes from adulthood and parenting. And then there's music. A new soundtrack blending old-school Disney Channel vibes with modern beats could totally resonate with fans both new and old. We'd get upbeat ensemble numbers, heartfelt solos about identity, and maybe even a powerful duet between Troy and Gabriella. Because let's be real, no matter how many years go by, people will always want to hear Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens sing together again. So while Disney's been playing with the idea of High School Musical 4 and Zac Efron might be open to it, the whole thing has to be done right. There's definitely potential, but only if it honors where the characters came from and adds something fresh. Because Troy is going back to high school again, that's not it. But Troy coming full circle as a dad or a teacher, now that could work. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for hanging out, and as always, drop your ideas for future topics in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one!